Well, let's jump right into it then. We have the divisional previews here. We'll just go division by division, team by team, and wrap each section with our rankings across. Gotta lead then with yours, Z, Atlantic Division. And if we go alphabetically, I thought about doing it like geographically or some shit. And then I looked at a map. I'm like, there's a lot that are way too close, and I'm not going to like figure that out. So alphabetically it is. Done. Atlantic Division, Boston Bruins. What do the people need to know? I'm going to lean on you for the most part for this one. I got my opinions, but you know a lot more here than I do.
Yeah, so obviously at this point, the most critical component of like being able to like throw any kind of prediction about the Boston Bruins was heavily predicated on Jeremy Swayman. He obviously signed yesterday for $8.2 million. So I like in theory, he potentially could even be starting tomorrow for game one. It's in the cards. That's all I know, but I don't think I think it's not likely, but it's certainly possible. Korpisalo was actually pretty decent in the preseason anyways. Plus he's not playing behind that wretched Senators defense corps. Again, the other two big-time acquisitions were Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, so their center depth obviously looks significantly better. A couple of guys that we were really hoping would make the team. Fabian Liesel is not going to be in the opening night, like starting lineup, obviously, so that's a bummer. But they're going to do what they're going to be a competitive team. They're going to be one of the better teams in the division. I think I landed on them third because even with Zadorov and Lindholm additions, which I think will be good, I still think the other teams have a little bit more firepower, like Toronto and Florida specifically. But another one that I'm very excited to like watch is Mark Kastelic. Also came over in the Olmark trade. He has been an absolute menace in the preseason, where like every single time he jumps over the boards, he is just on his absolute worst behavior, trying to fight literally everybody. But again, the keys here are obviously going to be Lindholm in the middle, playing with Pastrnak and Zacha. And then if they can get another big year or another step forward, or actually just another big year from Coyle, but also a guy like Trent Frederick, who had a couple of really nice seasons, he's playing really good hockey. And we'll see what Max Jones looked like outside of Anaheim getting a fresh start. But they are the biggest, heaviest team of the NHL, so they decided to like just shut everyone up about that, apparently. We'll see if it works at all for them. But yeah, they're still going to be a really good team. It's a ridiculously tight division. And they still have a solid defense. They've got a really good goalie. Korpisalo should be better than he was in Ottawa. That is not what I don't think that's what the pairs are.
Yeah, they're way off on some of this. They don't even have Baby Bergeron in the forward group.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are way off. I'm probably just going to stop showing these, I guess. This is unfortunate. I don't know. For me, though, that's the big thing for them. I love their blue line. I know you are very aware of shit. I might be the only person that likes Hampus Lindholm in a similar stratosphere as you. But I think the big thing for them is going to be, can either Coyle or Baby Bergeron come through and be a true 2C, and the other one go and be a menace on that 3C spot. I also can't get over the Kastelic number. I just see Torrey Krug and immediately think that he's a small person, which is not the way to do it. What do you think personally, as far as like Swayman goes, how long before he's back up to 100%? Like whatever the first game is, they throw him in. Do you expect everything to be good, or are you giving him a couple games of grace to get up to the speed of things?
I mean, he's historically never he's been hurt a few times and bounced right back when he's come in before. There's obviously no doubt that even though he hasn't been with the team as much, he's been training pretty hard all summer long, obviously. So I don't think it's going to take him a whole lot of time, if any time really whatsoever, to like get back up to speed. I mean, what he did in the playoffs was legitimately absurd. So obviously that's probably not exactly how well it'll go, but at the same time, like that's, to be honest, then when I look at his numbers, I'm like, actually, you know what? That's kind of like just fits with his career. So I don't think he's going to need a whole lot of time again, or if any, really, to get back up to full speed. So What'll be curious to see is just like how many games before we see the real discrepancy in the number of starts each guy gets. Like this is something that Boston hasn't. Like they're going away from the 1A 1B thing for the first time in like probably 7 years. Because I mean, even before that, it was like Tuukka and Halak were 1A 1B. Tuukka getting a few more games. But they've historically tried to like not have either one of them start more than like 50, 55. And we'll see what it looks like this year. So we'll see how long it takes for Swayman to really take the reins as like the number one and getting several games in a row over Korpisalo. But
you think he'll ever hug Korpisalo?
I'm curious to see what they do. I have no idea. It's not going to be a hug. There's no way. I don't think, but maybe. That'd be ridiculous.
But yeah, so your show, you've already given a ranking. Are we doing this? Are we giving a ranking for the team each time we talk about a team, or are we going to go through the rankings at the end?
We can go
you tell me.
To the end. We can do rankings.
Okay. Cool. So there's your Boston Bruins. This is going to be a weird leading the witness type talk, but we've already seen some regular season play from the Buffalo Sabres. What do we think here, Z?
Yeah, not great. Not great, Bob. Yeah, I mean, it really felt, I mean, obviously for the past couple of years, it's been, this is the year that they finally take a major step forward and they kind of fall flat on their face. And realistically, they didn't do a whole lot in the off season to make you think like that's going to happen. I mean, you're going to ideally, and I hope, because I love the player, I hope A, Bowen Byram stays healthy, and B, can have a big year. They're going to need they're going to need their young D-men like Owen Power, Tia Samuelson. Obviously, like I have no worries about Rasmus Dahlin. He's been legit since he stepped into the NHL. Awesome. Yeah, he's fucking incredible. But they're going to be pretty reliant on those young D to like log big minutes and play in like legit shutdown roles. Because again, like what they add up front, like Zucker, Sam Lafferty,
don't forget, and McLeod.
Oh, and McLeod. The McLeod thing's interesting.
And not Jeff Skinner.
Right. Losing Jeff Skinner. And then obviously, again, Devin Levi needs to be at least a league average goalie this year. So I don't.
Devin Levi. I think UPL is going to be the guy this year.
Yeah, he'll be their starter, but like he's not a guy that you can ask to play legit 65 games. No, I get that. Okay, fair. The way you said that, and this is me probably assuming too much, like I took that as like Levi's got to be the guy that carries the bag versus he just can't be the problem. Got it. I think they both need to be like at just like league average to give them some kind of a fighting chance. Again, I just don't like the way that they both
looked good. Like they weren't the problem.
Right.
And granted, can we be real too? Like, yeah, the forwards, pretty much everyone besides the goalies didn't look great. Devils also look pretty fucking good. Like that's got to be factored into this. I think the biggest bummer is JJ Peterka missing some time, because that's a guy that Sabres fans are obsessed with, and for good reason.
He's awesome. Yeah, no, he's had stretches too when he's been playing in the NHL where like he'll go on a little tear. And a guy like Jack Quinn too. They really
that was going to be the next one I was going to say.
Because again, another guy we've seen it in flashes, but obviously he's still super young, and he's been injured before. Consistency's been hit or miss, but I mean it's also part of being in Buffalo. And we'll see what year 2 of Zach Benson looks like. Who was the other one I was going to mention too? God damn it.
Zach Benson. needs to be mentioned several times. I also think Tage Thompson, we're going to find out it's kind of like everyone's talking about for the Wild with Phil Gustafson. Like, is Tage Thompson 2 years ago the real one, or is last year the real one? I lean closer to 2 years ago. Maybe he's not quite on that level, but like the dude can still fucking play and he can rip the puck like nobody. He needs to have a resurgent year, and Jack Quinn, like you mentioned, for me, is going to be a big one to watch here. Like, if he can step in and do what he was expected to do when he got drafted, he adds another element to their lineup. I like their roster, barring like their fourth line. Maybe I'm not a huge fan of, but like everything else looks good on paper. We'll find out if Lindy Ruff is the guy for the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Sick hat,
yeah,
though,
no,
Germany.
Yeah, that was sick, dude. And I'm curious. I hope Yuri Kulich goes off. I love that kid. I think he played in one of those games over there.
Yeah.
I think it's -2, but that's all right. But he's been nasty in the preseason too. But yeah, overall, I think the big thing too is they're in the Atlantic, which is just like it does not help their odds, obviously.
No, that's the big bummer. And you know that the team we're going to talk about next, anyone that's listened knows how we both feel, but they're in kind of the same spot. Like, you take the Buffalo Sabres, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Ottawa Senators and throw them into a different division, any one of them could arguably be a playoff team. I just think it's so tough coming out of this division. What do you think about Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, exactly how we've been talking to them for the past however long, dude. Like, I don't believe in it. I mean, the goaltending is ridiculous. Like, Jack Campbell, Ville Husso, Alex Lyon, and Cam Talbot. Like, I mean, they're all on the roster. And, I mean, you look at who they bring in, Jeff Petrie. Is that all they brought in the back end? I mean, Hall was 2 years ago. Gustafson they brought in. He's a decent enough,
positive
guy.
thing for their blue line is Edvinsson potentially taking a step.
Yeah.
Outside of that, like, him and Seider are the only things that I can even like spin into positives for their blue line. I hate their blue line, and this has all been assembled by Steve Yzerman. I think he's done a horrible job in free agency. I think his drafting has proven time and time again to be good. He's just never gotten high enough in the draft outside of Raymond to really make an impact pick, you know? I don't like it. Blue line sucks. And that is why I am not a big believer in that. You can't be missing both blue line and goaltending. That just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I mean, they didn't do much to like give themselves 4 decent scoring lines. I mean, they bring in Tarasenko, Tyler Mott, who can be like a okay fourth line guy. Sheldon Trees, like, yeah, they didn't do a ton other than like bring back Patrick Kane and bring in Vladimir Tarasenko. So if you get a full healthy year of Larkin,
that certainly matters and warrants being discussed. I also think, and this isn't like a shot at him, I think he's a great player. Bottom 4th of the league as far as 1Cs, right? Is that fair, or does that mean?
Yeah, maybe middle of the pack. I mean, like, again,
like, he is a stud dominant 2C. As a 1C, he's fine. He can serve that role, but he's not a game changer there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's not like a guy that's going to get you 100 points. He might be able to get, I think he's like a 70, 80 point guy. And again, he's going to have to stay healthy. And I mean, like, that's also just mandatory. If they not even like make the playoffs, like actually take a legit step forward as a team. But like, there's just so many Achilles heels for them. Like, even if, like, let's say, you know, Tarasenko and Patrick Kane have never been healthy, or they start hot. They're both old now. Like, one injury, and that's like 2 massive components of their offense just out the window right there. And I mean, you look at where they're going to be asking for scoring from, guys like JT Compher, Andrew Kopp, who were decent last year. They were okay. But I mean, for a team that's looking to get into the playoffs, they're going to be super reliant on very young defensemen and like Dylan Larkin and Lucas Random.
There's too many spots that are just like what you just said there, though, Z. Like, I look at a ton of spots and it's like, they're okay. Like, they're fine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of their okays and their fines to go on top of the layer of, again, we do not like the goaltending or the blue line. That's just not a recipe for playoff success in such a deep division. And we'll get into the rankings later, but I almost went full scorched earth on them. Yeah, I'm just not in on them. But anything else you want to say before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not me saying they're bad. Like, I don't think they're a bad hockey team. Like you said, they've got plenty of guys. Like, yeah, he's a decent player. He's a good NHL player. But in this division, it's tough. I mean, they'll probably beat some of the top teams a few times this year, and they'll be like, oh, look at that, Detroit, like at a statement win or whatever, because they're good. Yeah, it's not like they're going to be like basement dwellers in the league or whatever, but a lot is gonna have to go right for them to be a playoff team. That's how I'll put it.
And again, like we led this off with, if they're in a different division, maybe I'm speaking differently, but in such a deep division, I think every team in this division hits at least 80 points, barring like catastrophic injuries. So that's tough. Like, being in the 80s is a solid NHL team. I just don't think it's enough. Yeah. All right, next up, we got the champs. We've got the reigning Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers. Obviously, a lot of movement, like there always is with championship teams. Well, usually is with championship teams. The question isn't whether they're good. The question isn't whether we're afraid of them in the playoffs. The question really comes down to how long before they get into gear and actually worry about being good.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw that last year too.
100%.
So what I'll say about them is they're going to be a fucking problem again. This is a legit hockey team. The big losses, realistically, like, was there on the back end there, specifically on the power play, and they bring in similar-ish players. Possible like reclamation type project guys. Like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that Adam Boqvist is gonna like do Brendan Montour numbers, but where he's gonna be helpful for them too is like even when he was in Columbus, which was just god awful hockey team, he was still one of the better transition puck movers around the league. He's been able to like produce some points on like the power play. So he's got some of those traits. And again, the fact that he's going to be like, he's got guys on the back end like Gus Forsling. He's got, a guy like Ekblad still there. He's not going to have to be a go-to guy. You can probably shelter him a little bit. And I mean, he started playing more and more on that top power play unit as the preseason went on too. So I think he's going to be able to fill in and play a role. And then same thing with Nate Schmidt, who kind of feels like that OEL slot where it's like another reclamation project guy. But I really like Nate Schmidt. He's kind of just found himself in a few tough spots, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he also is another, great guy. I actually like that one a lot. And I think he could, again, fill a pretty similar role to OEL. But I mean, this is a team that's built on their stars. They're still there. They're not taking a step back. The big piece of business they need to get done with Sam Reinhart. They got that done. And then even a guy like that they signed from Boston, like Jesper Boqvist is an interesting one too. Fourth line, again, really good moving the puck. He's fast as fuck. Plays a similar style to them. He can be a prick to play against too, even though he's a small guy. But they're going to be very, very good. We'll see how long it takes them to get to top speed, but I don't see them taking any kind of major step backwards at all, and they're going to be a contender once again.
Agreed with the last part. I definitely can see a world where they end up being like the 3 seed from the Atlantic or end up like squeaking into the playoffs and then just tormenting everyone. Like they will be in the playoffs. I just have no idea how to gauge how they're going to come out of the gate. And I think one of the big wild cards for them, what kind of year do we get out of Anton Lundell leading that third line? Because their top 6, sick. Their blue line, scary as always, but they've always managed to get through it. And then what version of Bob do we get? And do we see the Spencer Knight coming out party? Like, is this where that transition in baton passing happens? 2 seasons in a row that Bobrovsky just endured cannot be easy for a guy in his 30s playing goalie. And again, they get to the playoffs, he's ready to go. But how much do they limit his workload? Can Spencer Knight pick it up and run? And beyond Forsling Ekblad, like, what's going to happen on this blue line? And again, this is just daily face-off, but like the second pairing right now is loosely labeled as Mikkola and Kulikov. That scares me. I think I'm with you that I think Boquist could turn into an incredible reclamation project, especially if he gets time on that power play unit. Holy crap. I liked him a lot. I thought he was a great return in that trade going over to Columbus. Things didn't work there for a myriad of reasons. But I'm really unsure of where I see this team finishing in the regular season. I think come postseason, they are the best team in the Atlantic. I'm not worried about it unless we see real concerns from goaltending and blue line, like real big concerns. But I don't know if I expect them to do the thing in the regular season after 2 really long seasons and kind of knowing that they just need to get in and they don't give a shit who they play or if they're home. So it'll be fun to watch that develop. Anything else you want to hit on with these guys?
No, I think that's it. Again, you're not a Florida fan whatsoever, but I really am a big Spencer Knight fan. So be great to see if he can step in and play good hockey again and kind of with all that shit behind him. So
yeah, you cheer for those guys for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Well, then we move on to the Québécois, the Montreal Canadiens. Going to be interesting to watch them this year, to say the least. Last place in the division last year. Everyone's putting them in last place. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of steps they take.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing them not finish last in the Atlantic.
I was gonna do it, but then it's funny. It's not even about the player, but it's something about the injury and Laine being out for a while that just shook me. It was like a jarring experience. I'm like, wait a minute. I was going to have Montreal not be in last. I was going to say that things are going to work in their favor. Why am I thinking that? I can't do it anymore. So I brought him from 7 back to 8. No more crazy pills.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a team that's going to be very, very, very good in 3-4 years. I
think 2 years is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be competitive probably in 2. We'll see again some of those other young defensemen, not named Lane Hudson and Caden Gooley, come along, but there's just so many young players that are going to be legit NHL players shortly. This year, probably not. Again, the fact that they're also in this division, not great. Patrick Laine getting hurt. Fortunately, doesn't have to get surgery, so that's great news, obviously. But they're in one because they're in the Atlantic. They've got a ton of young talent, and then the guys at Heart Lake, young stars are guys like Yoel Armia, Jake Evans, Brendan Gallagher, Michael Pezzetta, David Savard.
Can we get Gallagher out of Montreal? I need to see him on a playoff team.
I mean, will he make it a full season without getting hurt? That's the thing too. He gets hurt every year because the way he plays is just hair on fire, complete lunatic. He would be a perfect Florida Panther.
No, it's gonna sound like sacrilege. I need him in Boston.
Oh God,
him and Marchand playing together would be so fun.
Yeah, it would be very funny.
Very funny. I like a lot of their young guys, and I think that some of them are in a spot to take a step. Particularly, you look at how everyone last offseason, right, going into the regular season. Do you know who the player was that came out of everyone's lips first when you asked, who's the guy you're watching this year? The guy that missed everything Kirby Dach. And I really want to see what he can do coming back. And again, it would have been fun seeing him with Newhook and Laine. I still want to see him go out there and try and do the thing. I think their first line is really, really fun. The balance and everything it brings. But do they get the depth scoring? Do they get anything beyond that first line? And that's going to largely fall on Newhook and Dach. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's fascinating to watch. Also sucks that the player that the Montreal Canadiens fans hate so passionately, apparently, in Reinbacher isn't going to be playing. That's a bummer. But they got some fun guys on defense. Like Mike Matheson is an interesting character. Everyone's talking about Gooley being the guy to watch for a breakout. And then the amount of people that are all over Lane Hutson to be in the Calder discussion, it's an interesting group. And then, of course, Jack Ike just going out there to eviscerate people is what it is. Do I think that they're going to be a playoff team? No, not at all. Is this a team that I think is going to be in the 80-point range? Yeah. Do I think that they're a problem and no one should be taking them lightly when you play them? Yeah. Just not a playoff team yet. But I was very close to putting them up to number 7, which isn't crazy, except for the fact that no one else will do it.
Yeah. And like you said, this isn't a team that you're like going to be excited about going into Montreal to play against and like, oh, it's going to be point night tonight. Like, it's not going to be the case. It's going to be another team that they'll get a couple wins off some of the top dogs. Like, and Slavkovsky had a really good year last year, earned that big time contract that I think could potentially look like quite a steal down the line here. So if he takes another step forward, you're looking at like a 60-point guy. Nick Suzuki's incredible. He's so fucking good. Such a good two-way center. Cole Caulfield's going to do Cole Caulfield things. And like you said, it would have been really nice to see that second line of Newhook, Dach, and Laine. But, we'll see when we do get that eventually, because it's not like he's going to be out the whole season. But, yeah, we talked this before. The Atlantic Division is like the tightest of all the divisions, like from top to bottom. So that's why, for me, they're going to have to be the 8th place team here. And again, we'll do the full ranking at the end of this, but it's just, they're in for another year of not great, but I mean, like a weird situation where like they're going to get a high draft pick again, and they're going to have exciting players to watch this season in the NHL.
For sure. Next up, Ottawa Senators. Another one of those teams that's in the mix of like, do they push for a playoff spot? Do they not? We've been talking about them, Buffalo and Detroit, for several years. I'll lead off on this one. I really do feel like it's as simple as they added Ullmark. I believe in them in a way that I haven't before. And the last couple of years, people have all been like, oh yeah, Ottawa's the sneaky pick. I think they're going to make it. I've never believed in them. I have never thought they were a playoff team. This year might be different. Mm-hmm. And I know what you're thinking. It's a completely different team in front of him than in Boston, and that absolutely matters. I still think Ullmark is far and away the best goalie that they've had in a long time, and it's going to make a big difference for this group.
100%. Yep. And I mean, the fact that, and I think Ullmark being there is going to help Anton Forsberg as like the backup not have to be a go-to guy as well. We'll see it. If they hug, that's going to be those games, those Bruins Senators games. They're already a shit show every time they play anyways, but like that'll be a problem. What if Swayman and Ullmark hug at the end of those games still?
Well, no, they'll probably do it at center ice in the warm-up. Yeah. Dude, how much you want to bet that 0.25 on the AAV came because you got freaking Cam Neely coming down and trying to be funny, and like they land on the 8x8 and he pulls the RA goal. It's like, oh, all right, come on, hug it out, bitch. And he's like, too fucking soon. 2 more mil.
Right.
On.
Right. Thank you.
But yeah, I think that the goaltending is in a way better spot than it's ever been. And I'll pass it over to you here, Z, because you are higher than me on this blue line. And I think that there's things to be worked with here, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best blue line in the world, but I mean, you got another year of Jake Sanderson probably taking another step forward. Thomas Chabot's can be able to still play like 27 minutes a night and give you some offense there. Nick Jensen was a really, really, really nice add because, again, we talked about this last week. The Chychrun fit just wasn't really there. Nick Jensen fits more of the profile of a defenseman that they need, where there's like probably, significantly less offense than a guy like Chychrun, but a lot more defensive reliability, especially if you pair him with like a Thomas Chabot. But if they can stay more healthy too, like Sanderson, Josh Norris is going to be a big one to watch because every year he plays, he's like ticking at like half a goal per game, and then he gets hurt like every goddamn time. That 1 year at like 35. But he's going to be probably playing with like Amadio and David Perron too if he stays healthy on that third line. So he's going to be getting some decent matchups there, and you're playing with a legit playmaker in Claude Giroux. And then Shane Pinto not missing half the year is going to be huge for them. I
mean, don't speak too soon. You don't know if he's going to go on another gambling spree, but
he's actually just been fucking,
getting way better at covering his tracks. No, I think that's the real question for me with this team. Kind of like the Wild, like we've talked about many times. The second line, if they can get a true second line that provides that additional layer of scoring threat, I'm very high on this team. I just don't know what that's going to look like between, is it Pinto or Norris? Who's on the wing between Amadio, Perron, Batherson, Greg? Like, there's a lot of moving parts there. If they can get a solid, established second line and they can stay relatively healthy, I like the outlook for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, again, so where I land on them too is I still think they're just a tick behind the top teams in this division, but this is, like you said at the beginning, though, this is the best I've felt about the Ottawa Senators entering a season, like ever. Well, not ever, obviously, but like given the last couple of years. I think it's definitely a more complete team. And I mean, Tim Stützle is so fucking good. That kid is absolutely incredible.
And the David Perron needs to play in the playoffs. He needs to.
Yeah, we need him in the playoffs. Like we need air.
But then who's going to drink beers at all Matthews games?
Yeah, I don't know. Matthew?
Walt's triple fisting now.
He's like, God damn it.
Oh, all right. Let's move on then to what I'm going to label as the most polarizing team in the division. And by that, I mean they could finish first place. They could finish towards the bottom, and like neither would really shock me wholeheartedly. Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm torn between like the concern of, like Stamkos leaving, that's bad vibes. Then you got the good vibes of like, okay, Sergachev out. We're going to throw Hedman back into full like power play quarterback offensive responsibilities. You look at their top six and it's pretty much, can the top six get it done? Because the bottom six isn't going to do shit. Like, where do you fall on this team?
Yeah, so like this year was the best I felt about the Senators going into a year. This is the year that I felt the worst about the Tampa Bay Lightning going into the year than I have in a very long time. They've never been this top heavy before, where like obviously the emotional impact of guys like Stamkos and Sergachev leaving. Vasilevsky's going to have a big time bounce back year and be like a top 3 goalie in the league again. I mean, when you like, I pulled up the Athletics like depth chart, like their D is concerning. Like Hedman paired up with Perbix again. Hedman has started to show like the defensive gaps in his game lately than he like more than ever before. Obviously, he's gonna have to play more minutes, which is not great for him. And you're like, hey, Nick Perbix, where they were able to like get him big minutes, that's great. But if he's gonna be playing on your top pair with Victor Hedman, it's still to me like that. If you want to call yourself a contender, that's probably a problem.
Dude, he's not even listed as a player on Daily Faceoff. He is not injured, and he is not one of their 6. I'm very confused.
That's weird.
Yeah, very weird.
And not I mean,
we'll see what Ryan McDonough looks like this year. He's getting quite old.
Is it weird for me to say that if they make the playoffs, all the swapping and getting Ryan McDonough and Gensel is like huge. Like those two are guys that you are going to lean on so heavily in the playoffs. But for the regular season, I really don't know if it's the net positive that it yields out to in the playoffs. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd rather have Sergachev and Stamkos regular season. I'd rather have McDonough and Gensel postseason.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'll be curious to see what JJ Moser looks like in Tampa Bay. Like
they're saying good things.
Yeah, I mean, he got drafted and stepped right into the NHL on a really bad Coyotes team. Was able to at least kind of hold his head above water for the most part. He played big minutes, like pretty much since he got drafted. I think they took him as like a double overager, maybe, but whatever. But I mean, like the defense at this point, just given how lopsided these minutes are going to be, they concern me. They are very, very, very top heavy. Like their fourth line could be some combination of like Zemgus, Jurgensen's, Jesse Lonen, and like Mitchell Chaffee. Shout out Mitchell Chaffee, Iowa Wild legend. And I mean, we'll see what like Cam Atkinson can do.
He is interesting, and geeky too. I think like that third line could be interesting. Yeah. I'm not betting on them being good, but it's interesting. And then having Connor Sherry in your top six, according to Daily Faceoff, also scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I'm losing faith in Daily Faceoff. I think they're missing the mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
so again,
it's a wide range of outcomes for this team. Like they could torch, they could suck. And I think in every division, I'm going to pick a team that I just like don't know what the heck they are. That's Tampa for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like, because it's again like my big theme here is just how top heavy they are, but like the top part of their top heaviness is insane. Like they are legit. That top line is a joke. But it's just like it's not a trickle down. It is literally like all of a sudden it's like, oh fuck, we are like literally filling in, like beyond filling in gaps here.
Yeah.
So, and like we saw what happened like last year, Vasilevsky was not Vasilevsky, and their backup is Jonas Johansson, who people never forget. I forget the dude in Buffalo. Oh, I think it was Mike Harrington when he got traded, or when Colorado picked him up on waivers. Word for word, Mike Harrington, who covers the Sabres, said Jonas Johansson is without a doubt the worst NHL goaltender I've ever watched in my life, which was unbelievably ruthless and not necessary at all, yeah. But he's in it. So. Yeah, I mean,
that was funny. Mm-hmm. All right, last one here. Isha's favorite, Toronto Maple Leafs. They did things. We can say that with certainty. I don't know, man. It's gonna sound weird, but like my biggest source of optimism is I think there's an outside chance that they got the goaltending right.
Yeah, I've shifted on them. So in like the past few weeks, I've been like questioning them pretty hard. And then as I look at like the lineup as a whole, like I think Joseph Woll, the problem with having him as your 1A is just the fact that like he has not been able to stay like remotely healthy for a full season, like in years. He's young, but like every year he's had some major injury. And like that one last year was like, it worked out for Boston, but that was ridiculous. That was just like, it's also just so playoff Toronto like misery, but
play on Toronto misery. You know what's going to happen this year, right? This is going to be the year that Chris Tanev self-destructs. Like he's going to take a shot to the ankle in the first 3 games and he's never going to return.
Yeah. I hope not. I love Chris.
I'm not hoping that. I'm predicting.
No.
Not wishing it. I'm not summoning it. That's just, that's how it works for the Leafs. They finally land that like stalwart defenseman that they've needed, and it'll be the time that he finally breaks. Because somehow he's powered through all of this shit.
Yeah.
I will say my outside theory, if they keep Nyes on the first line with Matthews and Marner all year, it's going to be so fucking fun. And I think Matty Nyes is poised for a big sophomore year, and I'm all about it. I also think second line, Tavares, Nylander, Domi, fun. Bottom six, I have no idea what to make of. I don't know. No idea.
Well, I think so. That I mean, we're looking at very different projected lineups. I think.
What are you looking at?
I just pulled up the Athletics so I could just do them all in a row.
Oh.
But I
Tell me what they got.
You got Nyes, Matthews, Marner up front.
Yep.
Second line of Robertson, Tavares, Nylander. They've been going back and forth between playing Nylander at wing or center, which is interesting. Third line of Pacioretty, Domi, McMahon. McMahon got hurt before the playoffs. I think he scored 20 last year, and he is a piece of shit to play against. Like, he's a really good player, like a depth scorer that can play hard minutes and play super hard. So he's going to be a Berube guy too. So I think
he's not even on Daily Faceoff. I'm done looking at Daily Faceoff. It's over. Wow.
And their fourth line, they've got Pontus Holmberg, David Kampf, and Kelly Yarncrow. So the big thing is, I do think Craig Berube will be okay with having Yarncrow in their bottom six. Like, that was one thing. That Yarncroc was just too often in their top six last year. Like, it was just happening too often. And he's a good player, but like with this lineup, it makes more sense to have other guys, I think, in the top six over him.
How lazy is the take? Toronto will be better in the postseason with Berube, but there's going to be regular season bumps in the road to get them all playing his way.
I really don't know how much Craig Berube moves the needle outside of a few lineup decisions, like having Jan Kroger, like bottom six guy. That's realistically like it was crazy to me how it was very. So I strongly encourage everybody during the playoffs, always tune in to like Toronto media, like podcasts and shit, because it is so funny. We all might hate the Leafs more than any other team in the league, but there's no one that hates the Leafs more than Toronto Maple Leafs fans. It's incredible. And their own media. It really is great. But it was just crazy to me how, like, once Berube got hired, like, all of a sudden they were going to win the Stanley Cup. Like, that was, like, I don't know. I mean, again, so, like, there's still flaws just in, like, I can see the defense either being really good, like, Tanev's 36. OEL's projected to be on that second pair with McCabe, which is like, I don't know. And like this one has Benoit, who was a decent bottom pair guy last year. With Connor Timmins, I feel bad. Connor Timmins got hurt and has not been able to recover like the last couple of years, but he was a really fucking good young right shot D-man. But I think this is the year that they have like decent goaltending if Joseph Woll can stay healthy. That's the big question realistically is Woll going to stay healthy?
I think Stolars can play almost half the games too, if it comes to that. But
he's been good
for me. And maybe this is a lazy take too. I haven't seen anyone else outright say it, but OEL, good in Arizona, bad in Vancouver, good in Florida, moves on to Toronto. What's the similarities? Being in markets that don't care and there's no heat versus being in markets where you're under a magnifying glass. I don't know if him being in Toronto is the best location.
Yeah.
He was good last year, like no doubt, but Toronto's showing a little bit more confidence in him than maybe I would. That's all.
Yeah. So for me, this is one of possibly the best team in the division. They've got legit players up and down the lineup. As always, defense will be a big question, and goaltending should be good, assuming health. That's like, which you can't assume really. Like, you can't like put like confidence into them staying fully healthy all year long.
Oh, that's fair. Okay, well let's do it then. Let's run it. Do you want to go top to bottom or bottom to top? 1 to 8, 8 to 1.
We can go 1 to 8.
All right, who's your 1?
I think I landed on Florida.
All right. My 1 is Boston.
All right. 2, I went Toronto.
2, I also went Toronto.
3 Boston.
3 Florida. So we just flipped those around.
4 Tampa.
4 Tampa, but I grit my teeth as I do it.
5 Ottawa.
Yeah, all right, you are with me. 5 Ottawa.
6 Buffalo.
6 Buffalo.
7 Detroit. 8 Montreal.
I almost went 7 Montreal, 8 Detroit. I'm going 7 Detroit, 8 Montreal. Thanks, Line. Yeah, for me, with Boston, just looking at the team compared to last year, I just think Lindholm going to the 1C, pushing everyone down, moving Zacha to the wing. Like, the goaltending and blue line is what it is. I'm not worried there. I think the forward group is just going to be that much better off having him there. I think it's a huge get. And I think him and Pasta and Zacha could have a lot of fun this year.